Recording started.
So hello everyone, welcome to the Homeschool Conference, the free and online inaugural conference for homeschooling, unschooling, and related schools. If you haven't yet, please take a second to make sure that your microphone and speakers are working. Just go through from Tools into Audio and through the Audio Setup Wizard, and you will be able to make sure that you're hearing sound and are able to speak if you have a mic at a volume that is good. Can we go to the next slide? All right, and we have just started the recording, so now we've got the where in the world are you. If you look on the left-hand side of the whiteboard, you will see a number of icons. If you click your mouse on the star icon and then click on it one more time, you will be able to place a star where you are in the world. I'm putting mine right now down in the southern part of Sweden. Also feel free to enter in chat where you are and what time it is, what the weather's like, any information we can hear about where you are. I see northern United States, and I see Sweden on it right now. Yes?
Marie, I don't think that the participants have been given permission to use those tools.
Ah, thank you very much. Okay, I have not turned on your permission, so please try again if that didn't work. Yep, I see several in the United States. Wendy, to add where you're from, if you look on the left side of the slide with the map, there are a bunch of icons right along there. The second one from the top is a star. You click on that, and then click it one more time, and that will give you the star icon. Then just go right ahead and click where on the map you are right now. Ithaca, New York, Levens, Arkansas. Okay, good to see you guys. Howard, Ohio, thank you. Cornell, of course, wonderful. All right, fabulous. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so Jennifer, please feel free to take it away with your starting slide.
Great. Thanks so much. I hope everyone can hear me all right. If you have any sound issues, don't hesitate to type it in the chat. My name is Jennifer Fee, and I'm coming to you from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And our presentation today is called Inquiry Through Citizen Science. And here at the Cornell Lab, I manage the K-12 program. Has anybody ever been to the lab before? It is open to the public. We're located in Ithaca, New York. But we're really an international organization with the mission of interpreting and conserving the Earth's biological diversity through research, education, and citizen science focused on birds. And so there's about 250 of us that work here. A lot of them are professors and researchers. A good proportion of us are more public outreach and educators. And I work personally in the lab's education program on a project called BirdSleuth. And we create resources that help kids build their science skills, connect to their local habitats, explore biodiversity, especially birds, and engage in our citizen science projects. So if citizen science isn't a familiar term to you, we'll be covering that in just a little while. And we do that work in a couple of ways. One, by providing curricular resources, including kits that we sell and a growing variety of free downloads. Some of these are specific to the homeschool audience, and some of them are more after-school informal education, and then some formal resources as well. And many of our things can be adapted for a variety of settings. And we also do trainings like this webinar and other workshops. So on our website, we've got some of our other workshops listed there. So let's just take a minute to chat. This question that I asked in the beginning, what is citizen science? So let's answer that one first before we move on to the other questions. So take a moment, if you don't mind, and just chat if any of you know what this term citizen science is. I see Tara doesn't know what citizen science is. That's good. It's actually really good because I like teaching to people who have something to learn. Tammy's got some ideas about participating in projects with scientists. You're on the right track there. And I'm going to go into detail about exactly what our definition of citizen science is, so don't worry. It seems like most of us are beginners in this, but if you've ever participated in citizen science or know what projects you've taken part in, don't hesitate to share those as well in the chat. I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about the definition of citizen science. You were on the right track, Marie. It's projects in which volunteers partner with scientists to answer real-world questions. Marty says the Texas Stream Team. That is an example. There's lots of different citizen science projects that have to do with stream monitoring. And as you can imagine, here at the lab, our projects are focused on birds. This is actually a picture. It's a little bit out of date because it's from the end of last year. It was each red dot represents where we got a bit of data from someone. So you can clearly see the outline of the United States and into Central America and even parts of South America. Our citizen science projects just went global last year. So that means that we can collect data for people all over the world about the birds that they're seeing in their backyards or their schoolyards or their local parks or wherever. And the projects differ in several ways, but we'll go over those in just a moment. And I don't want to make it seem like the Cornell Lab of Ornithology or bird projects are the only ones out there, because there are projects on everything from watching ice to helping scientists understand galaxies, horseshoe crab monitoring, frog watch, weather, and these are just some of those projects. So, you know, if your kids aren't interested in birds, there probably is a citizen science project that they might enjoy. For example, Lost Ladybugs is actually run out of Cornell University, and it collects data on the different species of ladybugs. Project Budburst is a great one. It collects data about plants, especially common plants, and you just record when you see leaves, when you see fruits, when you see flowers, those kinds of things. If you're not into monitoring living things, you can also do something like CocoRa's, which is the Community Rain and Hail Network, and they collect data on weather and precipitation specifically. So what all of these things have in common is pretty much people gathering data together. And it invites people from all walks of life. You don't have to be a professional science in order to contribute scientific data. What I like to think about when I think of citizen science is, you know, scientists might be really interested in for example, northern cardinals. But in order to understand where those northern cardinals are, the citizen scientists are the eyes and ears of the scientists, looking and listening for those cardinals in order to send in the data. We've got a variety of citizen science projects at the lab. So here again, depending on where you're at and what you and your family's interests are, you can probably find a citizen science project for you. And we're going to go through each of these projects, just a slide or two on each one to help you decide if any of these might be good for you and your family. But they certainly all have commonalities like identifying and observing, in most cases, birds, collecting data about what you see, entering that data online, and also giving you the opportunity not just to collect the data, but also to look at the data. So if you're interested in, connections to math and so forth and graphing, you can actually view and retrieve the data online as well. We'll jump right into one of our citizen science projects that I think someone mentioned that they participated in, the Great Backyard Bird Count. You can see from this slide that the next GBBC is in February of 2014. One of the nice things about this project, for those of you that may not know birds very well or may not be sure of the time commitment you want to make, is that this project only takes place over a long weekend. So you can count for as little as 15 minutes over that weekend, or you can count every day for an hour to a day. It's totally up to you. And you send in your data, and then it gets added to data from all over the world, and then that gives us an idea of what bird populations are doing in midwinter. Here's just a few of the pictures that were submitted from GBBC last year. And I should also mention, I don't know if people are scrambling to try to take notes, but we will, at the very last slide of the conference, share a website with you where we've compiled all of the projects and some of the resources that I'm sharing today. So don't worry too much about scrambling to write too many details, because we'll provide those via a link at the very end. Moving on to another project, this project is called Project FeederWatch, and as you might imagine from the pictures and the name of the project, it's focused on bird feeding birds. So not all species visit feeders, but those that do are especially drawn to feeders in winter, whenever there isn't a lot else to eat besides the seed that's in nature or that we provide to them. So the nice thing about, I think, participating in a project like Project FeederWatch with your family is that you put up feeders and you're drawing the birds into you. So you're doing something positive for your yard and your environment and for the birds, but it's also making the birds really accessible. And this project just involves people putting up one or more feeders, and you count the flock sizes of the species that visit, and then you send us the data online or written. And I should mention, Project FeederWatch is just a winter project. It takes place from November to April each year. And again, it allows you, the feeders allow you to bring the birds to you where they're really accessible. I should mention where GBBC and most of our projects are free, there is a $15 fee to participate in Project FeederWatch, because they send you a handbook and instructions and a poster with the pictures of the common feeder birds and that sort of thing. So there is a fee to participate. It's got a nice protocol in that you count 2 days in a row, and then you take a week or two off, and then you count 2 days in a row. So there is a scientific protocol, which is a nice way to teach sort of how we collect data, why scientific protocols are important. We think that, and we know that really, that so many homeschoolers participate, or just families participate in Project FeederWatch, that we developed a short handout looking at the various subject areas and how they can be accomplished through FeederWatch. So again, the link to that free download will be on the page that I provide you at the end. One of our other projects that's seasonal is called Nest Watch. And as you might imagine for this, it's a spring and summer project because you're looking at nesting birds. And you don't have to monitor necessarily nest boxes, although, again, like feeders, that helps to bring the birds to you. But, if you found, say, a house wren nest, which actually we had a house wren that built a nest in our garage door opener basket last year, and we've had chickadees nesting in a small nest box that I put out. And we also have an American robin nest right outside my porch. So I know as far as my family goes, we had 3 nests that we could have monitored last year pretty easily. so you might do the same. You just look for nest building and try to figure out what species it is based on what the adults look like. There's handouts and resources on the website. This is a free project. And you basically tell us how many eggs, if you can see how many eggs, when the eggs hatch, how long the baby birds are in the nest, when they fledge, or in other words, for leave the nest. And if you can, tell us, the differences between how many eggs and how many fledglings, so we can get an idea of how many of your birds survived. Because this project involves monitoring nesting birds, and birds are really vulnerable when they're nesting because they're sitting on their nest instead of flying. We do require for you to get certified. It's a free certification. It's just a quick online quiz so that you understand how to ethically monitor the birds. You look for nests to monitor. You visit those nests every 3 to 4 days to tell us what's going on, and then you send your data using online entry tools. It's actually pretty darn easy to use. A lot of these citizen science projects, when I tell people about them, they say, ooh, that sounds kind of hard, but then when I show them, they're like, wow, that is so easy. So if any of this sounds like a little bit complicated, don't worry. Once you get started, you'll find that it's really easy to use. Our newest citizen science project is called Yard Map. And this is a cool project, I think, for families because it encourages you to actually map your yard. You can use something that is essentially built around Google Maps to highlight your yard. And then you tell us what is in your yard in terms of, do you have feeders, do you have bird baths, do you have some native plants, do you have any trees? And so it connects you to your backyard habitat. And I think it's great with young people to really see, oh, my habitat makes a difference for birds and other organisms, especially other animals. And it's kind of interesting to connect your backyard to the animals that live there. And you can look at your yard in the context of the larger landscape. So we're trying to recruit participants all throughout the landscape so that we can get a lot of yards and understand landscape-wise or habitat-wise what is going on for birds. Here's an aerial view of the Ithaca, New York area, and you'll see that you can click into Ithaca and then see, for example, where birds have been reported around you using Yard Map. Our largest citizen science project is called eBird. It's super flexible. Any bird, anywhere, anytime is the tagline. And so here, if you're in the most rural area, a very small town, or the biggest city, you can participate in eBird. And it is a free project as well. Registration is free and easy. You just click on register as a new user and essentially let us know where you birded, what kind of account you did. So for this, there are various observation types, and we need to know whether you were traveling while you made your observation. For example, maybe you're doing a walk around the block and you're counting birds as you go, or you're walking to your local park and counting birds on the way there. A stationary count, which would be an example of, let's say, you're sitting on your porch and you're just surveying your yard from a stationary position, what birds you're seeing. And an incidental report. I used an incidental report a couple of winters ago when a huge group of turkeys came into my yard, and I just thought it was so cool, and I kind of wanted to record the date and time that they came, so I filed an incidental report because I just happened to be doing dishes and look out my window and notice those turkeys coming through. It's a great way to contribute data, but also to keep track of what you're seeing. Like I shared in my yard, I just wanted to be able to say that I found those turkeys. So I'm helping scientists by telling them, hey, there are turkeys at that location, at that time of year, at that time of day. But I'm also helping myself because I have a record now of when those turkeys came. So maybe next year I want to look for them again. And finally, you tell us which species you saw. And eBird is pretty smart as a computer program goes. It tells you automatically, brings up a list of the most common birds that would be seen at the location that you're staying. So you can see that I'm in Ithaca, New York, and the time of year when I was entering this particular checklist. And so it brings up a list of the most common birds, which is nice because that reduces your amount of errors. You know, in that list of waterfowl, there's only one goose listed. There's only a few kinds of ducks listed versus the several kinds of geese that you might see in several, maybe dozens of ducks that might be available. It just pulls the most common ones. And then, of course, if you want to look at rarities, you can do that by clicking around and revealing those. I'll go ahead and highlight that. So you can add species, you can show rarities, those kinds of things. Just to give you an idea of how huge eBird is, again, this is through the year end of 2012. We had over 100 million observations submitted on 7 million checklists. We had almost 1 million participants, and they contributed data on 8,700 species. Now, there are only about 10,000 species of birds in the whole world, and some of those are incredibly rare. So by collecting data on almost 9,000 of the 10,000 species in the world, you can just get an idea of how dispersed our participants are in this, and over 200 countries. So volunteers contributed 7.5 million hours of data, and you can just imagine how many scientists would have to work full-time to contribute that much data. Interestingly, last year when we hit the 100 millionth checklist at the end of the year, everybody was just trying to, very interested in who would submit the 100 millionth checklist, the 100 millionth observation. And those of us in the K-12 education program were thrilled to know that it was actually a 12-year-old boy that submitted the American robin as the 100 millionth observation. So we were so thrilled because it really showed researchers everywhere that kids were participating in this project. And even common species like the American robin were really important, and we celebrated that a lot. So some of the concerns you might think of are, but I don't see a lot of birds. How am I going to participate if there aren't many in my neighborhood? There's this thing that exists that I call bird blindness. And it's when you go throughout your daily life and you don't see birds. You just kind of go about your business and don't see that they're there. But if you open your eyes, all of a sudden there are birds. I am willing to bet that those of you who are in this presentation who may not know a lot about birds, after this talk, when you go outside, your eyes are going to be a little bit more open. Your ears are going to be a little bit more open, and you're going to pick up on birds all around your environment. So before you dismiss this saying, oh, I don't think there are many birds in my area, open your eyes and ears and see if that's the case. And if it is the case that you're not seeing a lot, then consider how you can improve your local habitat to bring in more birds. For example, by putting up feeders or bird boxes or a bird bath. And all of those things you can build yourself. Another concern I hear a lot from adults is, I don't know how to identify birds. How am I supposed to help my kids participate? And this is one of those questions that I think there are two answers for. One, either if you're the type of person that really feels like they need to know before they can help their kids, then there are easy resources that we have available online, and I'll share some of those with you. And on the other hand, exactly as Marie was saying, let your kids be the experts and just have fun and learn along with them. And the kids are going to be, I think, a little bit more excited to participate if you're not the expert in it and they're the expert, or you're learning along with them. And even if you don't think you know a lot about birds, you may know more than you think. So, for example, who knows what bird number 1 is? What kind of bird that is? Go ahead and type in the chat box. What kind of bird is that? You may not know the species, but you may know the kind or the group. Woodpecker for number 1, woodpecker. Yep. Yep, it's a kind of woodpecker. How about number 5? Yes, number 2 is the gray horned owl. Number 1 is the woodpecker. Liliana's in here. Number 5 is a goose. Yes. So we may not know exactly what kind of goose this is, but we can tell from the size and shape, or at least the shape, because we actually don't have an indication of size. Long neck, webbed feet. Hey, that means it could be a goose. This is pretty cool because what it means is you know what group it belongs to, and then you can use a field guide to go to that group, because field guides are arranged taxonomically, so all the owls are together, all the geese are together, all the woodpeckers are together, and then it's just a matter of saying, did this bird have a red head or a white head? Did it have black on the tail or white on the tail? That kind of thing. And so you can, with a little bit of practice, really start to identify birds. And one more quiz. How about number 6? What kind of bird is that? Yes, it's some kind of seagull or a gull. Some kids would say, oh, it's some kind of shorebird or some kind of water bird. So again, you could go to the gull pages and try to find out, due to the markings, what specific kind it is. Now, you knew these bird groups. You didn't have the size, you didn't have the color, all you had was the shape. In real life, we have even more clues. Here's another picture. You don't even have the color, but some of us who know birds could even tell just from this what these birds are. For example, the one that I just put a star by. Does anyone know what that bird is? I'm seeing its behavior as it likes to perch on telephone wires. It has a small head and a long pointy tail. Yes, Tammy Lynn, you're correct. It's a dove. Most specifically, I know that it's a mourning dove because of that pointy tail. But if you can put it into the dove category, then you're awesome, because then you can go to the field guide and find out more. You know, in real life, we'd have even more clues about that dove. We'd know what color it is, and we'd also know its sound. And when we hear that sound, we'll recognize it as a mourning dove. Let me give you one more quiz. The bird that I've got the star on. Anybody know that species? A heron. Yep. Most specifically, I know that it's a great blue heron because of the plume on the top and the size. It's got this pretty plume on the top, which most herons don't have. And I'm going to give you one more. What species is that? Be as specific as you can. Yeah, Jane, I love to see great blue herons fly. They look almost prehistoric to me because they're so huge and gangly. Yay, Lisa, Jackie, mallard. Marty, that's a good guess. The wood duck. The wood duck would have a little bit different shape to the head, a little bit more feathers coming off the back of the head. This is a mallard, the really common duck that you see swimming around in local lakes. I can tell you this, I didn't know much about birds when I started the lab 10 years ago. I essentially sold myself in the interview by saying that I was a beginner myself, and that who better than a beginner to help people learn how to identify birds and use them educationally. So I was an informal educator. I actually worked at a garden, but you know, I knew the education, I knew the approaches to education, but I didn't know the birds. And so I've enjoyed over the last 10 years of working here just learning more and more about the birds in my area too. It's something that takes practice. It can be a lifelong hobby. So after you look at those silhouettes, like I said, we didn't even know the color, but we can start to identify birds. One good approach is to I'm sorry, we've got a little bit of talking coming through my speakers, and I'm not sure who's speaking. This is Jennifer. Sorry, I'm not sure if everybody else can hear that. I just had a little interruption. But anyway, moving on, you could have your kids focus on one bird at a time and really learn about that project, about that specific species of bird. If you're working, for example, with a group of kids, having each kid learn one or two birds, and then when they go birding out together, let's say you have 10 kids in a small group, if each kid knows two birds, for example, one of the children knows mallard and Canada goose, and another child knows the red-winged blackbird and the mourning dove, then together you know a large group of birds. I'll also say one of our great projects or great resources is called All About Birds, which is both an online bird guide and also background information about birds. So it is a great way to get started in birding and understanding the species of birds, and it's a free resource. We actually won the Webby Award a couple of years ago. It's such a fantastic page, just rich with information. And again, I'll give you the link to the things that I'm talking about via a special link at the very end. The cool thing about citizen science, I think, is that your counts really matter. So it is real world. And a lot of kids, especially when they get a little bit older, they don't want to do things just because you told them to. But they want to do things because they're interested or because it really matters. And citizen science really matters. It helps scientists understand where birds are at different times of year, and also helps you understand that same thing. eBird has really rich data out tools that are accessible via a View and Explore data tab. And as I said earlier, you can create your own life list as well. It lets us see really cool things like where birds are and where they aren't. This is a midsummer picture of where birds were reported, and also it was based upon a model that had lots of different habitat information in it, land cover data, satellite data, that kind of thing. If you look at this map, you can see that in cities, this bird is found more often. The whiter colors, the hotter colors are where this bird was spotted more often. So go ahead and think about it. What bird might this be that in the summer is found predominantly in a lot of cities and not so much in rural areas? For example, right here is the Adirondacks of New York State. This bird is not found in the Adirondacks. I grew up in St. Louis right here. It's definitely found in St. Louis, but not found very often in southern Missouri or southern Illinois, where I like to go camping and canoeing when I was younger. Pigeon or dove, these are great, great answers. Ileana, you have it. It's a chimney swift. They breed in chimneys. So just kind of a fun thing that we've actually got access to these maps online, and in real life, unfortunately, we couldn't show you the animated version in the context of the webinar, but these are animated maps that show you from January through December where birds are found throughout the country. So it's just fun to, for instance, look at your state or where you live and say, is this bird found here, and if so, when? You can run frequency graphs. This is a graph of when northern cardinals and ruby-throated hummingbirds are seen in Missouri. And in this example, northern cardinals are found on about 50% of the checklist in Missouri throughout the year. So the probability of seeing a northern cardinal if you're in Missouri throughout the year is about 50%. What about ruby-throated hummingbirds? So you can see, for those of you that are interested in the math connections too, this is great real live use of graphs. Ruby-throated hummingbirds, 0% of people in Missouri are seeing them until about April 1st. Then the graph steadily climbs, and about 20% of people see ruby-throated hummingbirds. So this means that the ruby-throated hummingbird migrates into Missouri to breed during the summer, and then quickly departs in the fall. And by about November 1st, there are no more ruby-throated hummingbirds. They've gone off to places like Costa Rica, Mexico, maybe even South America. But the northern cardinal, of course, is found year-round because it can eat seeds even in the winter. Common feeder bird. So we're going to wrap up in just a little while, but thinking about why do citizen science with your family or with the students that you work with. It gets kids outside. It's a good way to do scientific inquiry. You can teach STEM content and meet science standards or learning goals that you might have. It's a great way to participate in environmental stewardship. It gives you access to real-life data, and it connects kids to the scientific community. But most of all, it's just fun. I mentioned a little bit about feeding kids into inquiry. This is one of the things that we care deeply about in the education program at the lab, and we work really hard to try and support teachers and homeschoolers and informal educators in thinking about the ways that citizen science and outdoor observations can help kids ask and answer their own questions. You can keep track of questions on an I Wonder board. So as you're out observing, it's amazing the kinds of questions you'll have. You know, why are the geese flying in a V? How come they're making that honking sound? Why do birds build nests? All these different questions. And we had kids ask, do birds eat pizza? What kinds of potato chips would birds like to eat? Can I get more birds coming to a feeder that's sparkly pink or brown? These are all examples of kid questions. And here at the lab, we collect these questions and science reports from students and publish them each year. Here's an example of one of the studies that a student did a few years ago. This was based on her own observations in her backyard, that when the neighbor's cat was out, she thought that fewer birds visited her backyard feeder, her family feeder. And so she wondered if that was the case, and she wanted to do an experiment to see if, when a cat was present, fewer birds would visit a feeder. So she didn't feel like it was right to tie her neighbor's cat up and have him prowl around the feeder. So she took her stuffed animal cat, that you can see here in the tree, and she put it in the tree right next to her family's feeder. And before that, she recorded how much seed was eaten from the family's feeder without the cat in 1 week. So you can see from this side of the graph here, without the cat in week 1, there was about 3.5 cups of seed eaten. Once she put the cat out, there was only about 1/2 cup of seed eaten. And so Amy, who was only 9 years old, concluded that the cat was a good guard of the feeder. But what I loved about her project was that she did exactly what scientists do, was she got curious and wanted to know even more. And she said, you know what I'd like to do now is put the cat out for a long time and record every week how much seed is eaten, because I think the birds are going to realize that that's just a fake cat and he doesn't move. And over time, the birds will start to come back, and I think that over time, eventually they'll start eating the same amount of food as if the cat wasn't there. And Jane is having an I wonder. I wonder if it would have the same impact if it wasn't so close. We've also had, well, what if she had put a stuffed bunny rabbit or something that wasn't a normal predator? Like if you put a stuffed bunny rabbit in there, would it have the same impact or not? So just encourage you to, think about where students' interest and curiosities are taking them, and encourage them to go ahead and do their own studies, and we will consider them for publication. And again, I will include links to some of these resources and ways that you can download or get your own copy of BirdSleuth Investigator. So previously, you'll notice in this slide it says Classroom BirdScope. That was from 2006 when Amy actually did her study, but now we've renamed it to BirdSleuth Investigator. It's the same sort of project, publication rather. So just to summarize, citizen science allows people to submit observations to scientists and answer real-world questions. There are a huge variety of projects available for you, both having to do with birds and not. And these projects give young people the opportunity to make a real contribution. They connect kids to both their community, their backyard, their environment, and to scientists. And we know that making observations outside is a great way for kids to generate questions, and that can lead to great science projects. So we do have a website. There are a great variety of kits and free resources that are available, and we'll provide you with the links to some of the most homeschool-friendly ones. We've got an Info For tab. One of those tabs is Homeschool, another tab is Informal Educators. So that might be helpful. Like I said, we have a variety of workshops and webinars that we try to do throughout the year. So feel free to use our website as a resource of information. And I should also mention that I thought that I put the specific link in here, but it must not have transferred whenever we do it. I'm going to give you a specific web address, if you don't mind to get your pencils ready. You'll go to www.birdsleuth.org/homeschool-conference-webinar. So www.birdsleuth.org/homeschool-conference-webinar. And that should give you to the specific site that has all the links that we've talked about today. I think Lisa's going to put that in the chat. Uh-oh, 404 there. Go ahead and write that down and keep it. Yes, we're going to paste it in the chat. Let me double check it. I apologize if it's not working because I just decided to do this about 10 minutes before the conference because I didn't want everybody to have to write so much. So it's possible that I have made a typo in that web address. But if you go to that web address 10 minutes after this, I promise you there will be content there. Yes, please, Marie, check there later. I'd love to open this up for questions. Please feel free to write your questions in the chat. I know we've got about 10 minutes left, and there are actually 3 of us that are logged in right now that are from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. Myself, Jennifer P., my colleague Lisa Dorado, and our colleague Ileana Betancourt. So there are 3 of us that could answer your questions probably pretty well. We'd appreciate it if you kept in touch with us. We do have a Twitter. It's @BirdSleuth. Please join us there if you're on Twitter. We do have a Facebook page like everybody else, and we always are posting activities and cool quotes and pictures and everything else, information about birds. Our website. Oh, there it is, Homeschool Conference Webinar. There is I did type it in here. And as I said, if it's not live now, it will be in 10 minutes. And email us at birdsleuth@cornell.edu. I really appreciate everyone who has has joined us here today for this presentation. I hope you learned about some tools that you can use. I hope that you'll try citizen science. As I said, it's really actually fun and easy to use, can develop into a lifelong hobby, and is a great way to teach science and math content. So we hope you'll stay in touch with us and don't hesitate, even if you start participating next week and have questions or want advice, contact us in one of these ways, and we'd be happy to help you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer. That was a great presentation and really, really interesting and great leads for those of us who are trying to figure out how to help our own kids work with citizen science. So are there any other questions before we lose Jennifer and her colleagues? If not,
I'm seeing a question from Tammy. I see a question from Tammy come through about crow populations. Crows were really impacted by West Nile virus about 5 or 6 years ago, and that did cause population decline. My understanding is that things are starting to pick back up. But guess what? You could find out the answer to that via eBird. So if you look at crow populations in eBird, you can probably get a pretty good idea of where they're being seen and what their populations are like. Another thing to do would just be to search, because I'm assuming, I'm not sure where you live, Tammy, you might want to type that into the chat, but in a lot of, I think, the central United States, and even here in Ithaca area, that was what was really causing the declines was West Nile virus. So if you looked up, Arkansas, like I said, my family in St. Louis, I heard that the St. Louis crow populations were pretty decimated, so I'm guessing that the Midwest and southern United States was hit pretty hard. So you could Google crow West Nile virus and see current research on that. Yeah, Yard Map is a great project. I haven't yet done it for my own yard because it's such a new project. I did set up a map, but I haven't really utilized it yet. So Marty, I hope you'll participate and let me know how you like it.
Any further questions for our experts before we lose them? Well, thank you so very much, ladies. I would like to remind everyone as we close off this session to please officially exit the room so that our recording can be saved. It won't process until everyone has left the room. I see another comment from Marty, so I'll give you a second to respond to that.
Well, thank you so much for your compliments. I appreciate it. It's been really fun to present today, and I hope that you've learned something. And I hope it's something that you can use with young people.
It's definitely the case for me. So thank you very much, everyone, and we'll probably see many of you in the upcoming sessions.